The Ludhiana cell of the operation was particularly active, with Prince, Anmol Chauhan, and Rahul Sagwan working as a coordinated team to identify and groom potential victims. They had developed sophisticated methods of social engineering, often spending weeks building relationships with targets before introducing them to the investment opportunity. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of the network was the extent of involvement from Moga, where 5 residents had become integral to the operation. Prabjot Singh, Govinder Singh, Amol Singh, Simran Singh, and Beant Kaur had formed what investigators would later describe as a processing unit. They handled the movement of money through various bank accounts, making it difficult for authorities to trace the flow of funds. As weeks turned into months, Sanjeev found himself deeper in the web. The fraudsters employed a technique known as loading. Once they had gained his confidence with small successes, they convinced him to make larger and larger investments. The market is moving rapidly, they would tell him. To maximize your returns, you need to increase your position size. The sophistication of their operation was evident in every detail. They provided him with a login to what appeared to be a legitimate trading platform, complete with real-time charts, news feeds, and portfolio tracking. What Sanjeev didn't know was that every number he saw was fabricated. Every profit figure was a lie designed to encourage him to invest more. By the time he realized something was wrong, Sanjeev Pandey had lost 3.72 Indian rupees crore, his life savings, money earmarked for his children's education, and funds he had borrowed against his property. The moment of truth came when he tried to withdraw his profit to pay for a family emergency. Suddenly, the responsive customer service became evasive, the platform showed technical errors, and his calls went unanswered. While the trading fraud was devastating in its scope, it would soon be overshadowed by an even more audacious scheme that preyed on people's fear of law enforcement. Mahendra Pratap Singh Gill, another resident of Mechawara, became the target of what criminologists call authority impersonation fraud, a sophisticated psychological manipulation that exploits people's inherent trust in law enforcement. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Gill was reviewing accounts at his business. The voice on the other end was authoritative, speaking in the measured tones of someone accustomed to commanding respect. "This is Deputy Commissioner Sharma from the Economic Offences Wing," the caller announced. "We need to discuss some irregularities we've found in your bank account. This is a matter of national security, and we need your immediate cooperation." The word sent a chill through Gill's spine. Like most law-abiding citizens, the mere suggestion of legal trouble was enough to trigger anxiety and compliance. The fraudsters had chosen their approach carefully. They didn't claim to be from local police, but from a specialized unit that most people wouldn't be familiar with, lending an air of credibility to their claims. "Sir, I assure you I haven't done anything wrong," Gill responded, his voice betraying his nervousness. "I understand your concern," the fake officer replied, his tone mixing authority with reassurance. "This might very well be a case of identity theft or unauthorized use of your account details. But to clear your name and protect your assets, we need to follow specific protocols immediately." The psychological manipulation that followed was a masterclass in social engineering. The fraudsters had studied law enforcement procedures just enough to sound convincing. They referenced real departments, used appropriate jargon, and created a sense of urgency that prevented their victim from thinking clearly or seeking independent verification. "According to our investigation, someone has been using your account details to transfer money to terrorist organizations," the caller continued. "If we don't act immediately, all your accounts will be frozen by order of the High Court, and you could face serious criminal charges." This threat was carefully chosen for maximum impact. The mention of terrorism played on post-9/11 fears that remained prevalent in society, while the threat of account freezing created immediate financial anxiety. The reference to the High Court added an additional layer of legal authority that most people wouldn't question. The network responsible for this elaborate deception was different from the trading fraud gang, but equally sophisticated. At its heart were two key figures from Mohali, Karnamjit Singh and Govir Singh. These men had developed expertise in voice modulation and authoritative communication, skills that made them particularly effective at impersonating law enforcement officers. But the operation's most dangerous elements came from Jalandhar, where a group of individuals had turned authority impersonation into a precise science. Kuljit Singh had studied actual police procedures and legal processes, enabling him to speak convincingly about investigation protocols and legal requirements. His partner, Mohan Singh, specialized in creating fake documentation, from fabricated warrant papers to counterfeit official seals that could be sent to victims as proof of the investigation's legitimacy. Sanjeev Mittal brought technical expertise to the group, using voice-over Internet Protocol, VoIP, technology to mask their true locations and make their calls appear to come from official government numbers. This technical sophistication meant that even if victims tried to verify the calls by calling back, they would reach numbers that appeared to be legitimate government offices. Gurpreet Singh, known by his alias Gopi, served as the operations logistics coordinator, managing the complex web of bank accounts and money transfer systems needed to process the fraudulent transactions. Meanwhile, Amrit Pol Singh, ironically nicknamed Doctor despite having no medical training, specialized in the psychological aspect of the fraud, understanding exactly how much pressure to apply and when to offer reassurance to keep victim compliant. The scheme they employed against Gill was methodical and ruthless. Over the course of several hours, they convinced him that the only way to prove his innocence was to demonstrate his cooperation with the investigation. This cooperation, they explained, required him to transfer his money to safe government accounts where it could be protected during the investigation. "Mr. Gill, I understand this is stressful," the fake officer said during one of many calls that day. "But you need to understand that we're trying to help you. If you don't cooperate with the security protocol, we cannot guarantee your protection from the criminal elements who have compromised your account." The fraudsters had prepared for every objection and every moment of hesitation. When Gill expressed concern about transferring such large amounts, they provided him with fake documentation that appeared to authorize the transfers. When he wanted to consult with his bank, they warned him that doing so might compromise the investigation and could result in the criminals being alerted. "Sir, this investigation is classified," they explained. "If information about our security protocols leaks out, it could endanger not just your case but other ongoing operations. We need your word that you will not discuss this with anyone until the investigation is complete." This demand for secrecy was crucial to their success. By isolating Gill from his support network, his family, friends, and professional advisors, they eliminated the possibility that someone might recognize the fraud and intervene. Over the course of 2 days, through a combination of fear, false authority, and fabricated urgency, the fraudsters convinced Mahendra Pratap Singh Gill to transfer 2.65 Indian rupees crore from his various accounts to what he believed was secure government facilities. The money, of course, went directly to accounts controlled by the criminal network. Inspector Rajesh Kumar had seen many fraud cases in his career, but the sophistication of these two schemes caught even his experienced eye. When Sanjeev Pandey first walked into the Connor CyberCrime police station in March 2025, his story seemed almost too elaborate to be true. A trading fraud involving crores of rupees, with suspects spanning multiple states and countries? It sounded like something out of a crime novel. But as Kumar began investigating, the pieces started falling into place with disturbing clarity. The Telegram conversations, the fake trading platform, the network of individuals across Punjab, it all pointed to a highly organized criminal enterprise that had clearly operated successfully for months, if not years. "So, they seemed so professional," Pandey explained during his statement. "They had answers for everything, documentation for every claim, and results to back up their promises. How was I supposed to know it was all fake?" Kumar understood the victim's confusion. These weren't street corner con artists running simple scams. These were sophisticated criminals who had studied their craft, understood psychology, and leveraged technology in ways that made their frauds virtually indistinguishable from legitimate business operations. The investigation into the trading fraud began with digital forensics. Kumar's team analyzed the telegram communications, traced IP addresses, and began mapping the network of bank accounts involved in the money transfers. What they discovered was a complex web of financial transactions designed to obscure the trail of stolen money. The breakthrough came when they identified the Dubai connection. Nirod Singh Hania had made a crucial mistake. He had used his real identity when setting up some of the financial infrastructure for the fraud. This gave Kumar's team their first real lead, and from there, they began unraveling the entire network. Meanwhile, when Mahendra Pratap Singh Gill reported his case, Kumar initially suspected connection to the trading fraud due to the similar amounts involved and the timing. However, as the investigation progressed, it became clear that these were two separate operations with different methodologies, different personnel, and different approaches to victimization. The authority impersonation fraud proved even more challenging to investigate. The suspect had been careful to use technology that masked their identities and locations. However, they had made one critical error. They had become overconfident in their success and had begun operating with less caution than in their earlier schemes. Kumar's team employed a multi-pronged approach to both investigations. They worked with telecommunications companies to trace call records, collaborated with banks to track financial transactions, and coordinated with law enforcement agencies in other states to gather intelligence on the suspects. The technical investigation revealed the sophisticated nature of both frauds. The trading scam had employed legitimate-looking websites, professional-grade graphics design, and even customer service operations that could handle routine inquiries convincingly. The authority impersonation fraud had used advanced VoIP technology, fake caller ID systems, and professionally produced fake documents. But perhaps most troubling to Kumar was the realization of how many people had been involved in these operations. These weren't isolated incidents perpetrated by small groups of criminals. They were large-scale operations involving dozens of individuals, each playing specialized roles in complex criminal enterprises. The arrests began in waves, starting with the most accessible suspects and gradually working up to the key figures in both operations. The coordination required was immense. Simultaneous raids across multiple states, careful timing to prevent suspects from warning each other, and extensive preparation to ensure that evidence was preserved. The first major breakthrough came with the arrest of the mogul of the trading fraud. Prabjot Singh, Govinder Singh, Amol Singh, Simran Singh, and Bean Kaur were taken into custody during a coordinated early morning operation. Their arrest provided crucial intelligence about the structure of the organization and the roles of the higher-level operatives. From there, the investigation moved quickly. Gurjot Singh was arrested in Faithgar Sahib, where investigators found sophisticated computer equipment and detailed records of victim communications. Baldev Krishan's arrest in Zirakpur yielded technical evidence about how the fake trading platforms were created and maintained. The Mohali arrests were particularly significant. Karnamjit Singh and Govir Singh, the masterminds of the authority impersonation fraud, were found with extensive documentation about their victims, including detailed psychological profiles and notes about which approaches have been most effective for different types of targets. Perhaps the most dramatic arrest was that of Parvinder Singh Tony in Chandigarh. Known for his ability to identify and recruit victims, he had been operating with increasing boldness, apparently believing that the complexity of the operation made him untouchable. His arrest yielded not only evidence related to these specific cases, but intelligence about other ongoing fraud operations. The Ludhiana cell proved more elusive. Prince, Anmol Chauhan, and Rahul Sagwan had apparently received warning of the investigation and had attempted to flee. However, Kumar's team had anticipated this possibility and had coordinated with law enforcement agencies across the region. All three were eventually captured, though not without significant effort. The technical specialists, Sam Archbat from the Trading Fraud and Sanjeev Mittal from the Authority Impersonation Scheme, provided crucial insights during their interrogations. Their detailed knowledge of how the fraud were implemented helped investigators understand the full scope of the operations and identify additional victims who had not yet come forward. The international dimension of the case presented unique challenges. Niraj Singh Hainia's arrest in Dubai required extensive coordination with international law enforcement agencies. His wife, Sarita Singh Hainia alias Ritu, was initially more difficult to locate but was eventually found and arrested. The financial investigation proved almost as complex as a criminal investigation. The fraudsters had used sophisticated money laundering techniques, moving funds through multiple accounts, converting them to different currencies, and using both legitimate and illegitimate financial services to obscure their origins. From the trading fraud operation, investigators were able to recover 9.35 Indian rupees lakh. While this represented only a fraction of the 3.72 Indian rupees crore that had been stolen from Sanjeev Pandey, it provided some measure of relief and demonstrated that the investigation was yielding tangible results. The authority impersonation fraud recovery was even more challenging due to the speed with which the money had been moved and dispersed. However, investigators managed to recover 5 Indian rupees lakh from various accounts associated with the suspects. The total recovery of 14.34 Indian rupees lakh, while significant in absolute terms, represented a sobering reminder of how difficult it is to recover funds from sophisticated fraud operations. The legal proceedings that followed were complex, involving charges under multiple sections of the Indian Penal Code, the Information Technology Act, and various financial regulations. Each suspect faced different charges based on their specific roles in the operations, with the masterminds facing the most serious penalties. As Inspector Kumar reflected on the investigation, he was struck by several troubling trends that these cases represented. The sophistication of the fraud operation suggested that cybercrime in India was evolving rapidly, with criminals adopting increasingly professional approaches to their illegal activities. The geographic spread of both operations, spanning multiple states and involving international elements, highlighted the borderless nature of cybercrime and the challenges this poses for traditional law enforcement approaches. The need for enhanced coordination between agencies and improved technical capabilities became clear. Perhaps most concerning was the psychological sophistication of the frauds. These weren't simple get-rich-quick schemes targeting the obviously gullible. They were carefully crafted operations that could deceive intelligent, successful individuals by exploiting universal human psychology, greed, fear, trust and authority, and the desire to protect one's financial security. The victims, both Sanjeev Pandey and Mahendra Pratap Singh Gill, were successful business people who had managed complex financial decisions throughout their careers. Yet they had been completely deceived by criminals who understood exactly which psychological buttons to push and when to push them. The investigation also revealed the extent to which legitimate technology and business practices had been co-opted for criminal purposes. The fraudsters had used real business communication tools, professional design services, and legitimate financial infrastructure to create their deceptive operations. This blending of legitimate and illegitimate activities made detection much more difficult. The Connor cybercrime investigation became a landmark case in Punjab's fight against digital fraud, not just because of the amount involved or the number of arrests, but because of what it revealed about the evolution of cybercrime in India. For law enforcement, the case demonstrated the need for specialized skills, enhanced technology, and improved interagency coordination. The success of the investigation relied heavily on digital forensics, financial analysis, and coordinated operations across multiple jurisdictions, capabilities that needed to be developed and maintained. For the public, the cases serve as a stark reminder that cybercriminals had evolved far beyond the stereotypical image of amateur hackers working from their bedrooms. These were professional criminal organizations with sophisticated operations, technical capabilities, and psychological expertise. The victims, while devastated by their losses, became advocates who improved public awareness about cybercrime. Sanjay Pandey began working with local police to educate other potential victims about the warning signs of trading frauds, while Mahendra Pratap Singh Gill shared his story to help others recognize authority impersonation schemes. The successful conclusion of these cases represented a significant victory for law enforcement, but Inspector Kumar knew it was just one battle in an ongoing war. As he processed the paperwork for the final arrest and supervised the completion of the evidence collection, he was already aware of new cases emerging with different methodologies and new challenges. The criminals who had been arrested would face justice, but the techniques they had developed, the infrastructure they had built, and the psychological insights they had gained would likely inspire copycat operations. The fight against cybercrime was not one that could be won definitively. It required constant vigilance, continuous adaptation, and sustained commitment from law enforcement, the financial sector, and the public. The recovery of 14.34 Indian rupees Lakh and the arrest of 22 individuals sent a strong message to the criminal community that sophisticated fraud operations were not beyond the reach of law enforcement. But it also highlighted the enormous financial losses that victims of cybercrime continue to face and the challenges involved in recovering stolen funds. As Kumar locked away the final pieces of evidence and prepared his comprehensive report on the investigation, he reflected on the human cost of these crimes. Beyond the financial losses, both victims had suffered psychological trauma that would take years to heal. Their trust in digital financial services had been shattered, their confidence in their own judgment had been undermined, and their sense of security in an increasingly connected world had been fundamentally altered. The digital revolution had brought tremendous benefits to society, enabling new forms of commerce, communication, and collaboration that had improved lives and created opportunities. But it had also created new vulnerabilities that criminals were quick to exploit. The challenge for law enforcement, and for society as a whole, was to find ways to preserve the benefits of digital connectivity while protecting against its dangers. The Connor cybercrime cases of 2025 will be remembered not just as successful investigations, but as harbingers of a new era in criminal activity, one that required new approaches, new skills, and new levels of public awareness to combat effectively. In the ongoing battle between criminals and law enforcement in cyberspace, these cases represented an important victory, but the war continued.